Hey everybody, Devon Miller here, and welcome to another video in my YouTube series about my guitar rig. Today we are finally done with guitars, and we are going to start looking at the Mesa Boogie Triaxis PreAmp.
Hey, this is John Petrucci. I'm here at Mesa Boogie hanging out with all this incredible gear, and I'm going to talk about my live touring rig. I decided to do a more compact version, and the great thing is that Mesa Boogie has the Triaxis, which can get all the tones from my C+, my Mark IV, and also great clean sounds as well. And it's MIDI programmable. It's a single rack unit, and I pair that up with the 290 power amp, and I get this really, really big, full, great sound.
Now, all guitar amplifiers have three main components: a preamp, a power amp, and a speaker. And the Mesa Boogie Triaxis fills that preamp section of my guitar rig. This is where I get all of my clean and overdriven or distorted tones.
There. That distortion, see it?
Yes, sir. It's getting larger as we close in.
Opinion, Mr. Silva?
I think it's an energy surge.
Enough energy to hide a ship, would you say? A cloaking device.
Red alert, Mr. Scott.
There you come. I think I'm Bird of Bracer. She's arming torpedoes.
Fire, Mr. Scott. Good shooting, Mr. Scott.
Now, a couple of quick things before we go any further. I do have all of the effects bypassed in my guitar rig, so what you're hearing in this video is strictly the Mesa Boogie Triaxis, the power amp, and the speaker cabinet. And then the second thing is that the Mesa Boogie Triaxis is actually one of the original inspirations for doing this video series in the first place. Over the years, I've searched YouTube and the internet for different videos on the Triaxis and how to get certain sounds and how to program it. And it seems like everybody is always using the Triaxis for like heavy progressive metal. And this preamp does so much more than that. I really wanted to showcase the versatility that this preamp has. You know, it is definitely not a one-trick pony.
Daddy, I want another pony.
So the Triaxis has 8 different modes, which can kind of be thought of as the different channels in a regular guitar amplifier. Some guitar amplifiers might have 2 channels, where it's like a clean channel and an overdrive channel. Some guitar amplifiers might have 3 channels, where it's like clean, crunch, and lead. There are other guitar amplifiers that might have 4 channels, and some that are just a single channel amp, just one channel only.
Part off. Okay, I want the channels 18, 24, 63, 109, 87, and the weather channel.
Weather channel bringing you world weather in 24 hours. And weather conditions remain the same. With a minor warm front.
Welcome home, Marky.
Hey, Dad's home. That's right. He's home. Dad's home.
Lord of the manor.
Hello.
King of the castle.
Hello. What the hell is this?
Lithium mode on.
It's better. Damn kids. Hey, son. Watching on TV for a change?
The different modes in the Triaxis are a different preamp circuit that's been lifted from one of Mesa Boogie's classic amplifiers. So it's kind of like having 8 guitar amplifiers all in one. It is an analog preamp that operates off of tubes, so there's no digital modeling whatsoever, but it is digitally controllable through a process called MIDI. Now, MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that I can switch to different modes and adjust the different controls on the Triaxis by remote control.
I don't need anything except this ashtray, and that's the only thing I need is this. I don't need this or this. This ashtray. And this paddle game. The ashtray and the paddle game, and that's all I need. And this remote control. The ashtray and the paddle game and the remote control, and that's all I need. And these matches. The ashtray and these matches and the remote control and the paddle ball. And this lamp. The ashtray, this paddle game and the remote control and the lamp, and that's all I need. And that's all I need too. I don't need one other thing. Not one. I need this. The battle game and the chair and the remote control and the matches for sure.
So the first mode that we'll be looking at today is the Rhythm Green mode. Now this mode was lifted from the Channel 1 preamp circuit of the Mesa Boogie Mark I amplifier. Now from what I've read, this amplifier was originally based on the old Fender Blackface amplifiers and the Fender Bassman amplifiers that the old blues guys fell in love with years ago. As a matter of fact, in the manual, they refer to this mode as the Vintage Clean mode.
Thank you very much. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Calhoun Tubbs, known to my friends as Hard Fingers. See, that's because back in 1947, I once played the guitar for over 36 hours straight, for no reason at all. That's right. I wrote a song about it, like the kid, here it go. I play guitar for 36 hours, for no reason at all. Thank you very much.
There are 9 different controls on the front of the Triaxis that you can use to adjust the sound of each mode. So let's take a look at those now. The first control is the gain control. Now, this controls how much input volume is hitting the front of the tubes. So at higher settings, the sound gets overdriven and fatter. And at lower settings, it gets cleaner and brighter.
Ugh, I can actually hear you getting fatter.
So the next 3 controls are treble, middle, and bass. These allow you to shape the sound further by adjusting the low, middle, and high frequencies. So treble set high will give you a brighter sound. Treble set low will give you a darker sound. Middle set high will give you a fatter sound. Middle set low will give you more of a scoop sound. Bass set high will give you a thicker sound. Bass set low will give you a thinner sound.
I feel thin, sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread.
The next 2 controls are the lead 1 drive and the lead 2 drive. Now these have no function in this mode, so we're going to skip over those for now.
He's all right.
He's fine, and he's completely unaware that anything happened. As far as he's concerned, the trip was instantaneous. That's why his watch is exactly 1 minute behind mine. He skipped over that minute to instantly arrive at this moment in time. Come here. I'll show you how it works.
The next control is the master. This is the volume control. I mainly use this to balance the volume of this mode with the other modes that I have saved in the preamp. Pretty self-explanatory. Higher settings, the volume gets louder. And at lower settings, the volume gets quieter.
Loud noises!
The next control is the presence. Now, in most amplifiers, the presence is kind of an ultra high frequency boost. I typically use this to dial in the amount of pick attack that I have. So set higher, the pick attack is more pronounced. And at lower settings, the pick attack is more subtle.
Will you be wanting the back pot, sir?
Middle of the day, Alfred? Not very subtle.
The Lamborghini, then? Much more subtle.
And finally, we come to the dynamic voice. Now, on most Mesa Boogie amplifiers, they have a 5-band EQ at the end of the amp. Since they couldn't put the 5-band EQ on the Triaxis, what they did instead was they took several of the most popular settings of that 5-band EQ, and they programmed them into the dynamic voice. So each setting of the dynamic voice is a different EQ setting of that 5-band EQ. In general, the higher the dynamic voice, the more the low frequencies and the high frequencies are raised, and the middle frequencies are scooped out. So at low settings, it's just a small smile curve. And then at higher settings, it gets much more pronounced. Now, I typically don't use the dynamic voice in this mode, or if I do, I use it at a very low setting, because at higher settings, the bass frequencies just get way too overpowered and way too flubby.
You, could you come up here, please? What was your name?
Katie.
Katie, what was that thing you were playing today, the big thing?
Cello.
Okay, this is a bass guitar, and it's the exact same thing, but instead of playing like this, you tip it on the side, cello, you've got a bass. Try it on. Okay, now play this note right here, that's a G. Okay, but let your fingers do the rock and keep that G coming all day long. G, 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 good, stop.
So there's two pre-programmed factory presets for the rhythm green mode in the Triaxis, and the first one is a warm, clean sound. So as you can see, the gain is set to 5, so not really overdriving the tubes, keeping it clean. Treble is also set to 5, so not too bright, but not too dark either. Middle is set to 3, so kind of scooping the mids out a little bit. Bass is set to 4.5, so not getting too heavy on the bass frequencies, but also not too thin either. Lead 1 drive and lead 2 drive are both off because they have no function in this mode. Master's at a 5.5, so moderate output volume. Presence is set to 7, so kind of bringing out some of that pick attack in this warmer sound. And of course, dynamic voice is set to 0. There's no reason to scoop out the sound any more than it already is.
Metal's cold, ugly. Wood's warm, clean.
So the other pre-programmed factory preset in this mode is a more of a pushed overdriven sound. So as you can see, the gain is set to 10, so maximum input gain, really pushing those tubes hard into overdrive. Treble is set to 9, so trying to really brighten up this sound since the gain is set so high, it's a really fat sound. So we're trying to bring in some treble, trying to brighten it up a little bit, get a little more distinction on the notes. Middle is also set to 10, so really doubling down on that fatness of this particular sound. Bass is set to 1. Now, the more overdrive you have, the less bass you want to have, because the bass can get way, way too flubby and out of control with higher bass settings. Of course, lead 1 drive and lead 2 drive are both off. Master is set to 3. With the higher input gain setting, we have to bring that master down to kind of balance it out so that it doesn't get too loud. Presence is at a 4.5, so kind of backing off on the pick attack a little bit, but not too much. And dynamic voice is set to 0.
Mr. Blutarski. 0.0.
So I use the rhythm green mode for 2 main sounds and occasionally a third. The first one being a kind of a fat, clean sound for the song Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. So as you can see, the gain is set to 3, so not driving those tubes hardly at all. I want to keep it as clean as possible. Treble is set to 7, so trying to keep it on the brighter side. And in conjunction with that, the middle is set to 6, so kind of pushing those mid-range frequencies to kind of help get that guitar out front. Guitar players, mid-range is your friend. When you get into a full band situation and you put drums and bass and keyboards and vocalists, all in the mix, your guitar is going to completely disappear if you have those mid-range frequencies scooped out too much. Moving on to bass is set to 5, so exactly middle of the road, not too thick, not too thin. Of course, lead 1 drive and lead 2 drive are both off. They have no function in this mode. Master is also set to 5. So again, middle of the road output volume. Presence is also set to 5. So, moderate pick attack. With this sound, I'm not really too concerned about the pick attack because I'm kind of doing those volume swells, which, there's no pick attack there anyway. And finally, the dynamic voice is set to 0.
Gosh, on the whole, I'd say it's been swell.
Swell?
Yeah.
Clark, there are very few people left in the world who feel comfortable saying that word.
What word?
Swell.
Really? Oh, so it's kind of natural. I'm sorry.
Clark.
The other main way that I would use this sound is for kind of an on-the-edge of breakup country chicken picking sound. So I would use this on, say, the song Folsom Prison Blues. Or the song Love Shack by the B-52s.
The hits on this CD aren't just by obscure artists. No, there are big names on it, too. Like who? Well, as a special bonus gift, if you phone by 5 o'clock today, you'll receive that #1 B-52s hit, I've Got a Thorax to Grind With You.
Just yesterday I saw the insect world, and I looked around and it was unfurled. I went to the picnic and it was bad. I had a deviated septum and it made me mad. I saw bugs and bugs and bugs and bugs, and those bugs seemed like they were on some drug. They kept on crawling on me like I was a worm, and then I had to do the antworm squirm. Oh, oh, oh.
So, as you can see, I've got the gain set to 9, so, really driving those tubes hard, but not all the way. So that way, if I kind of back off on the volume a little bit, it really cleans up. And then if I dig in a little harder, there's a little more grit there. Treble I've got set to 10, so, really trying to bring on that country twang. Middle I've got set to 6, so kind of keeping it a little bit on the fat side, but not too much. Country guitar is more of a thinner sound, so don't want to have too much mid range there, especially with humbucking pickups. Bass I've got set to 2, so again, really trying to keep the sound thinner on the thinner side to kind of mimic the country guitar. Lead 1 drive and lead 2 drive are both off. Master I've got set to 3. Again, because we've got such a high input gain volume, I need to bring that master down to kind of compensate for that. Presence it's set to 10. So, really trying to accent that pick attack. And bring out that kind of country spank. And, of course, dynamic voice I've got set to 0. And finally, I do use the rhythm green mode for sometimes for one more application, and that is when I'm playing the fiddle. Now, I kind of go back and forth between which sounds better on the fiddle, whether it's rhythm green or rhythm yellow. But when I use the rhythm green, it sounds like this. So as you can see, I've got the gain set to 5, so not really pushing the tubes really hard, trying to keep them more clean. Treble I've got set to 4. This fiddle is already bright enough as it is, so I kind of bring the treble down a little bit, treble frequencies down a little bit to kind of keep it a little more on the warm side, so it doesn't get too pointy. Middle, I've got boosted to 6. Again, to kind of bring the fiddle out front in the mix. Not scoop it out too much. Bass, I've got set to 5. Just kind of keeping the warmth of the low end there, but not boosting it too much. Lead 1 drive, lead 2 drive are both off. Master is at a 5.5. This fiddle is a little quieter than my guitars, so I bring the master up a little bit to compensate for that. Presence I've got set to 3. So boosting the high-end frequencies just a little bit to kind of keep the sound crisp but not overpowering. And dynamic voice I actually have set to 2. Now with the fiddle, I do find that in this mode, kind of scooping out the mids at the end of the signal chain and kind of boosting some low-end and high-end frequencies a little bit just kind of helps warm this instrument up and kind of fill it out a little bit.
Grab a fence post, hold it tight, whomp your partner with all your might. Hit him in the shin, hit him in the head, hit him again, the critter ain't dead. Whop him low and whop him high, stick your finger in his eye. Pretty little rhythm, pretty little sound, bang your heads against the ground. Promenade all around the room, promenade like a bride and groom. Open up the door and step right in, close the door and into a spin. Whirl, whirl, twist and twirl, jump all around like a flying squirrel. Now don't you cuss and don't you swear, just come right out and form a square. Now right hand over left hand under, both join hands and run like thunder. Over the hill and over the dale, tuck your head and lift your tail. Don't you stray and don't you roam, turn around and promenade home. Corn in the crib and wheat in the sack, turn your partner, promenade back.
So that pretty much wraps it up for the rhythm green mode of the Triaxis. Please, as always, throw a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, let me know what you're thinking about this video series, and the next time we will take a look at the rhythm yellow mode. So goodbye for now, and I will see you in the next video.
Thank you.